So now we'd really like to give a lovely warm welcome to Sarah Hawley, who is from Growmotely. And she was a digital nomad pre-pandemic. It slowed her down a little bit, also having a baby a year ago. And she's missing him a little bit, but she's very pleased to be here. She's an Australian living in Texas. And Sarah is the CEO and founder of Growmotely, the world's first end-to-end platform that facilitates conscious companies in hiring equally conscious remote professionals. Sarah, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, have we got me? Yes. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. And I feel like my presentation builds really nicely on what we've heard this morning. I can relate a lot to some of what Mandy said around wanting to travel a lot in my life. And when I became an entrepreneur in 2009, after about 5 years, I realized I wasn't traveling as much as I wanted. I was going into my office early in the morning and staying late in the day. And I was really desiring to move and live in other parts of the world again and have the kind of freedom that I had prior to starting my own business. And so in 2014, I turned all of my companies at the time remote. And I eventually moved to the US and then have been digital nomading, as Anne said, before the pandemic. And remote work ended up giving me the freedom and flexibility to nomad or not, but work from wherever I wanted, build my lifestyle the way I wanted. But it also gave that to all of my team. And that was one of the greatest gifts. Remote work for me was the key that unlocked the door to a more conscious way of leading and more conscious culture within our organization. So that's what I'm going to be talking to you today. And as I said, building a little bit off the last presentation on radical flexibility being one of the aspects of what we are seeing people desiring from work and where the future of work is going and where I see the future of culture, this huge evolution we're going through right now when it comes to company culture. All right. Next slide, please. I also can't click because of my presentation. So what is conscious leadership and conscious culture, and how do we as leaders show up and create that for our teams? And really what it has come down to for me is doing my inner work as a leader, as I evolve as a person, as I grow, bringing all of that work into my company and into my team and creating a safe space for them to do that as well. I feel like on one of the last slides, they talked about wanting to be seen as a whole person. And that is what I'm talking about here. We are whole people, and being able to be a whole person at work, not just this professional and personal self divided. Next slide, please. So what I have come to experience over the last, 8 years now is that a high-performing team comes most easily and most beautifully from a team who are happy and engaged. Yes, we can get some level of high performance from creating a high-pressure environment and just staying really on our team, and we will get some levels of performance, but we won't get longevity in that performance. We will get high turnover. But if we actually create an environment where our team are happy and they're engaged in the work that they're doing, that performance is going to come naturally. It's going to come much more easily for them and for the company as a whole. And this really comes a lot down to alignment, which we'll talk about momentarily. Next slide, please. Oh. So what does it actually look like to create this thriving team, and what are people seeking when they're looking at employment now? They're seeking trust and empowerment, firstly. They're seeking freedom and sovereignty, that flexibility that we heard about before, and they're seeking alignment and meaning. After the last 2 years of soul searching and being confronted with really our own mortality, with how our lives were, having everything be put on hold, we had this time to check in with ourselves and say, what am I actually doing with my life? And am I happy with all of the things I'm doing? And these things are really driving what we've been hearing about, the Great Resignation, this huge shift in talent that's happening all over the world, really, as people are seeking this from work now instead of what they were seeking before, which maybe was more around security and a paycheck and stability. Next slide, please. So how do we create an environment of trust and empowerment? The first thing is being sure that your team members know exactly what it looks like to succeed in their role. So giving them clarity, ensuring they understand what they're responsible for, what they're here to contribute to the organization, and how success actually looks. I recommend embracing a solution-focused approach to challenges, and so not being that leader that comes in and solves all of the problems for everyone, but encouraging our teams to identify that we have a challenge or a problem and come up with a couple of solutions that we can then brainstorm together if needed. Being okay with mistakes and failures and making space for people to clean up their own mess. Once again, if we come in as a leader or a manager, I really think that this is kind of the behavior of managers, is to come in and say, oh, this is all a mess, I'm just going to fix it all. Oh, people can't be trusted, da 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 da. You're creating that self-fulfilling prophecy if you act in that way as a leader or a manager. So the way that we all learn is to, if we make a mistake in something, to have to actually then go and rectify and fix the mistake. It's unlikely that we will ever make that mistake again. Creating space for creativity, evolution as individuals, and contribution. So having everybody's voice heard and ensuring that they feel valued and that their opinions matter. And we can do that through the different meetings and check-ins and way that we communicate online as well. And then really the most important thing, I think, in teams of the future, certainly for me, is transparent, open, and timely conversations. So talking with your team members about what is going on in real time. No, not feeling the need to create stories around situations or shelter them from the reality, but just being really transparent with where the company's at, what might be happening, and having those conversations in a timely manner. One of the things I think is potentially a thing of the past is kind of these regular annual performance reviews and things. The way I think about it is, why would I wait to tell someone they haven't been doing very well in a certain area, build it all up, probably I'm getting more resentful as time goes on, and then sit across the room and tell them that, you know, for the past however long, they haven't necessarily been performing at the way that we would like them to. That feels like, why wouldn't I just address it the moment that it happens and give them that opportunity to grow and evolve and ask questions at that time? So we really embrace at Growmotely a more constant kind of just open dialogue around how the entire company is going. And that goes for me as well as a leader. My team can also come to me and tell me where I need to improve and how I might not be showing up in the best way possible. And we've found that having this transparent, open dialogue just creates a lot of trust within the culture and allows us to move more quickly. And I think people really are desiring that, millennials in particular, and I'm sure the next generation. Being growth oriented, we want to know what we could be doing better, how we could improve, what is the reality of the situation, so that we're empowered to change it, evolve it. Next slide, please. So what does freedom and sovereignty look like for individuals? Async work, that's the name that we've all come up with. We used to call it fully flexible before there was a real term for it. But uncoupling the hours worked from the outcomes achieved. And this is something that's really important for businesses to get their head around, that it doesn't matter when the hours are worked or how many hours are worked. What really matters is that person achieving the outcomes that we previously have kind of outlined for them as clearly defined as success for the role. And the same goes for the location. For me, we talked about radical flexibility in the previous slide. I think it really doesn't matter where people work, whether it's their home, a cafe, or another country, wherever they feel to be at that time. I loved the slide with all of the different evolutions of what we're seeing, of the types of workers and the lifestyles that people want to create for themselves. But that is really the greatest gift that I think we can give ourselves and our teams, is create the lifestyle you want. I just bought 72 acres, an hour and a half out of Austin. I'm moving there with community, and I'm building a huge tech company with a global team. That lights me up every day. That feels so amazing that I get to do that and I don't have to be in a certain city because that's the best place to be to build a tech company. That's where you'll find the best talent. I get to live the life that I want to live, and I know my team are doing the same thing. Jess, who's here in the front row, she started working with us when she lived in Canada, then she was in the US, now she's in Scotland, and she's going to move to Croatia. So it makes me so excited to see that that's her lifestyle right now, that's serving her best, and she's doing her best work from wherever it is that she wants to be. And then the other thing that is super important is creating an environment where we encourage our team to experiment with what works best for them in terms of their working hours in the day, in terms of their cadence, their own energy flow. An example for myself is I work really well early in the morning. I have a lot of creativity. My brain works really well, not so good late at night. And so I actually like getting up early, sometimes 4 or 5 a.m., doing a couple of hours of work. Then I end up spending time with my baby for a few hours before his nanny gets to the house. And then maybe I do meetings and other work later in the day that doesn't require such intense brain power. And I'm usually switched off most days by 4 or 5 in the afternoon, sometimes even earlier, because I'm not functioning super well at that time. And creating an environment where your team can have the flexibility to do that is actually beneficial for everybody. As I just explained, I'm a morning person. Some people are night owls. When we were in this environment where everyone had to come to the office at 9 a.m. and leave at 5, excuse me, often later than 5 or earlier than 9, but for many people in our team, we were missing their most productive hours, actually. Many people were already, their productive hours were gone, and others, it was later on in the day. And so they were still waking up until 1 p.m. in the afternoon, maybe, trying to, get their brain power going. And their night owls, they really kick into gear at 11 p.m. So for many of our team members, we were just missing all of that highly productive time, making their lives kind of miserable by forcing them to be in one location and missing out on this important brain power. So I encourage everyone in our team to find what works best for them and embrace that. And all of these things that I'm talking about here for leaders and managers who are more accustomed to the old way, it takes a lot of work to know that these stories that we've been conditioned that this is the most effective way to work are not necessarily real, and we need to question them, and that requires a little bit of letting go, a little bit of risk. But even if we say to ourselves, if we are finding it difficult, what if I just do it for a week, or I just do it for a month as a trial and see what happens? Because we just got thrown into the biggest trial of our lives, the biggest test with the pandemic. And what ended up happening is we proved on a massive scale that people can be, if not the same level of effectiveness from home, they're actually more effective. So apply those same principles in your team and just try things and see how it goes. You can always go back if it's not working. Next slide, please. And alignment and meaning, this has become very, very important for people. They want to work in a company where they know that what they're doing has impact and it matters in the world. And so as leaders, it's important for us to be able to communicate clearly what we do and why we do it and why we care about what we do. So companies, the easiest way for them to do this is to have this vision statement, a purpose statement, like a why, and then the values or the ethos. And the values of the ethos is really the culture. So how do we show up for each other? How do we show up every day? What's really important to us? And then to revisit these things regularly. We do it every single month in our all company meeting. And it might seem strange to have to write it down and then tell people and then come back to it all the time. But coming back to it all the time is what helps keep it alive within the organization. It helps us come back to center if we go off track a little bit, and we all can at times. So using the vision, the values, and the purpose to navigate conversations as well around alignment. I've found that in the most case, when I find team members are not super engaged, it's just that they've moved out of alignment with our organization. They're now more passionate about something else, or they're feeling called to show up in a different way. It's not a bad thing, but it's great to have an open, transparent conversation about this so that we can navigate what's next for the company and what's next for them. sometimes people show up in a way that's outside of the values. And so just coming to that value and saying, this is what I witnessed in how you showed up or how I showed up, and this is our value. Let's talk about the difference and how we can just kind of get back on track. And that's a room for growth and development for individuals or for ourselves. So the key to all of this is that as leaders of companies, we are really being called to step up at this time. And we are being called to do our own work and to embody it every day so that we can create a container like this for our teams. And what that means is owning it when we mess up. And probably as the leader, owning it more times than anyone else will, because it's really important that we lead by example, and we show that we are willing to be vulnerable and to admit when we haven't lived up to one of the company's values, or when we are triggered, or whatever it might be that's challenging for us to show up as our whole selves in the organization. Next slide. And I did want to kind of just go a little bit deeper into one aspect. The biggest kind of lie that we were told for a long time is this idea of a professional self and a personal self. This idea that we could go to work and put on this professional mask, and the things that hurt us and trigger us and make us feel unsafe or angry, they don't apply at work. We just turn that off within our emotional system. That is not true. All we're doing is pushing that down and creating a lot of workplace trauma that is perpetuating the existing trauma that we already have in our lives. Trauma might seem like a strong word, but really all I'm referring to here is something that's happened in your life that was experienced as something that was scary in some way, made you feel betrayed, abandoned, rejected, whatever it may be. And that when you experience that similar situation again in life, it feels very triggering, it feels very heightening in your body. And the way to notice that this is happening is when you feel activated in your nervous system, and you feel very angry, you feel very hurt, very sad, very frustrated, in a way that feels almost a little bit out of your control. That's how to know when you're triggered. And I'm here to tell you that all of these trauma loops that exist in our life, we are playing them out at work as well. And it is better to be aware of this and understand that we are whole people. We are not a professional and personal self, and we are going to be triggered from time to time at work. And if we can notice these triggers and bring them up, it is a chance for everybody to grow and evolve. It's scary and it's difficult, and it will happen to the leaders as well as all of the people in the team. So it happens to me regularly. Anyone who's in my team has seen me cry in team meetings, seen me get really angry and say, I need to take a break because I feel really heightened right now. So what I would recommend is starting to have a relationship with your body when you feel that activated sensation, you feel like you're a little bit out of control and you're not sure how to navigate what's going on. Take a break. Just say, I'm feeling triggered, I'm feeling activated, I need to take a break, and set a time to circle back in with the team once you've had time to process. So processing, what does that look like? Journaling or sitting with yourself, but dive into the experience. So when else in my life do I feel like this? What is the root fear at play? So what is this thing that I keep experiencing over and over again with lovers, with family, with friends, now with my work colleague? What am I actually afraid of? What is at the core of this thing? Prepare to then come back and share that experience with your team. Even though it is very vulnerable, it gives everyone a lot of clarity as to why that is triggering for you. And then one of the hardest things to do there is to think about, what are the boundaries? What is my trigger and my thing that I need to work on? And what is also a boundary? So we don't have a trigger and then tell everyone, you just can't ever do this to me because it'll hurt me. Part of it is for us to work on and evolve and heal ourselves. But part of it is also to allow other people to know. And sometimes people have crossed the line. Maybe they have shown up in a way that's a little bit too whatever it may be. And just keep that conversation open as you navigate it. This work here is very, very powerful. And you can go to the next slide. And what it means is when we embrace this work as leaders and create this kind of organization that has this high level of trust and freedom and empowerment and sovereignty and alignment. And we open this space up for people to be their whole selves and to heal and grow while they are working on this amazing project with this amazing group of people. Our organizations become vehicles for transformational change. And rather than the old world where our professional masks were on and we were continuing to create trauma over trauma over trauma. And I'll just very quickly, anytime you fire someone without them knowing, or somebody quits on you without you having had a previous conversation about them maybe wanting something else, that is traumatic. Nobody experiences that with no emotion whatsoever if there is any form of connection in that. And so that's what I talk about when I talk about workplace trauma. When we get to a place where we're having open conversations as everything shifts and evolves as it always does, we start to heal ourselves, and that healing goes on and has a ripple effect into every aspect of our lives. And that's it.